All right, so tonight we're going to be joined by a wonderful group of graduate students, some who were at our first grad school events. You might be familiar if you were at the first one. And they'll be answering some frequently asked questions about interviews and personal statements related to the grad school application process. So yeah, we're really excited, and I will pass it off to Cynthia to talk about the structure of the event.
Yeah, so the event will be split up into two parts. So the first 30 minutes approximately will be a Q&A with all of the grad students, and that part will be recorded. And then in the second section, we'll be splitting everyone up into breakout rooms with one or two grad students, so that if you have any questions, you can save them for the breakout rooms so you can talk about more specific topics with the grad students. And so yeah, now we're going to have our panelists briefly introduce themselves with their name, year, and field of study.
Okay, I guess that means I'm first. Hi, everyone. I'm Freddie. I'm a first year in the Genetics Genomics Development Program. And I think that was it. Name, year, and study, right? Also, sorry, my camera is being dumb. I don't know what's going on, but I don't think I'll be able to have my video on for this.
I'm Sarah. I am a third year in the Biochemistry, Molecular, and Cell Biology program.
Hi, I'm Daphne. I'm a second year in the Policy Analysis and Management PhD program.
I'm Jen. I'm a third year PhD candidate in Ecology and Evolutionary Biology.
I'm David. I'm a fifth year also in the Ecology and Evolutionary Biology program.
I'm Anna. I'm a second year in the PhD program in the Anthropology department.
Hello, my name is John, and I'm a seventh year PhD in Applied Mathematics.
All right, thank you to our grad students for introducing themselves. So we can go straight into our frequently asked questions that we have prepared for today. And grad students, feel free to just unmute yourself and answer if you guys want. And we'll probably limit to about 2 to 3 grad students like per question. So part 1, we're going to first talk about the interview. So our first question is, what were some commonly asked questions during your graduate student interview, if you had an interview?
For at least I can speak for my field. At least the most common thing that they typically ask about is your previous research and experience. So I, again, am biochemistry and molecular biology. So they wanted to know what I could tell them about what research I had previously done. And then typically they would spend a little time telling me about research that they do in their own lab. And I was offered the opportunity to ask questions about their research too, but typically just about research.
I can maybe give a slightly different perspective from a more social science side. I was not really asked about a lot of previous experience. They were more focused on why this program in particular was a good fit and why the professors and the resources of the department were appropriate for or particularly helpful for the research questions that I was interested in.
I also remember getting asked, I remember getting asked a couple of times like what I wanted to do after grad school. And it's not like, you have to have a definitive answer, but professors were just like, we want to know that you're thinking about this at least.
I would say that also for programs that are fairly independent, at least for our program, they really like hearing us what we're interested in. So what kind of questions and how we're thinking about the science of the research we're trying to pursue in our program. So they're really curious about how we want to approach specific questions, specific like research interests.
Okay, so for our second question, how did you prepare for your graduate school interview? And do you have any advice looking back on the experience?
Yeah, so so kind of like in relation to what everyone else said, but you'll hear people use the word like elevator pitch or something like that. And I would have like a very like a 3 to 5 minute description of your research and how you see your research fitting into the program already. So I would take time and look at the resources that are available at the university and maybe like drop some like key names of different facilities or different professors that you could collaborate with. And then also you'll get a list beforehand of all the faculty that you'll interview with. And I remember I made like a spreadsheet and I went through and I just listed like very like, don't read like a whole bunch of their papers or anything like that, but I would just list, I would get on their websites or the department website and just list out their general research interest, or if there was something that I could specifically relate to. And then also like a question specifically about their more specialized area of research.
I can add that one piece of advice I was given for my grad school interviews that actually was super duper helpful was I was told to, because I mean, I guess typically the way that our interviews worked was that I'd meet with a set number of professors, and we'd have an allotted, I think it was like 30 or 40 minutes to talk to each professor. And they will explain their research to you. And then I was told to try and ask one good question about each person's research, because if you can demonstrate to them during their pitch of what they do in their lab that you're able to like take in that information, think about it, and turn it into something that makes you curious or something that you would be interested in pursuing, that was a really good piece of advice I received and that I think worked really well looking back on it.
I think sort of, again, I'm not sure whether this has a ton of overlap with natural sciences as opposed to social sciences, but I was really advised to remember that even if you have a certain set of interviews that you're going to with professors, you are being interviewed the whole time you're there. So I was there for like a day and a half, and we had dinner scheduled with graduate students in the program and with professors in the program. And so fortunately, this was not me, but I was with a student who started spouting some political beliefs that clearly were not going over well with the faculty in the department. And I later heard that he did not get accepted to that program after the interview weekend, and I did. So just remember that your behavior and your fit with the department and your ability to get along with fellow grad students and be a good colleague to everyone is something that and in many programs, at least in my experience, that are looking for. They don't want people are paying attention even when it's not officially an interview segment.
I also want to add, I did this, and I don't. This is kind of atypical, I guess, but hype yourself up before your interviews. Like I would before my interview started, like the succession of like a bunch of them back to back. I would go into the bathroom, like look in the mirror, and like get yourself going, because like you want to bring in a lot of energy, so that like you don't get tired after like you're by your fourth interview or something. You're drained. So do whatever you can to try to get yourself energized of it, because like you've said the same thing a couple times now, but the professor that you're meeting with it's their first time hearing it, so you want to really set a good first impression and make it really look like you're passionate about science, even though you're like exhausted from a long interview weekend.
Thank you guys for the advice. Let's go on to the next question. So our next question is, do you recommend asking the interviewer follow-up questions after the interview? And if so, what are some good questions to ask?
I've done a lot of interviews. I've also interviewed a lot of people. And so I would definitely recommend, if you have real questions to ask, I would definitely ask them after the interview when you're still in that setting. Don't just like, if you don't have anything meaningful to ask, like I wouldn't just invent something. But a question I like to ask is, do you like your job? Because most of the time people laugh because they're not expecting that question. And that's a moment where you like get a real sense of, do the people in this program, in this department, feel comfortable there? Do they like it? Are they like, what kind of attitude are they bringing to work? And that it's a moment for you to assess whether you fit the program. Like you're auditioning them, not just them auditioning you. So any questions you can ask to get yourself more information, I would do that.
Also, I didn't follow up after with asking any questions, but I did email the people that I interviewed with to thank them for their time. Is certainly not required, but I don't think that there's any for giving you the time of day, I guess.
Okay, perfect. So now we're going to move on to some questions about the personal statement. And so the first question is, how does the personal statement you wrote for graduate school differ from the one that you wrote for undergraduate schools?
So I think for me, I think the biggest difference that I noticed was that because I was really focused on the research for my graduate school application. And so in undergrad, when I was applying, I was just, wanted to learn about, I think at the time it was chemistry, and I wanted to take over the world and talk about leadership and various things that I did while I was passionate about this specific major. But when I was applying to graduate school, the focus now was on the research, what kind of problems I was wanting to work on. And so I focused on the faculty that I thought at that school that were good fits, and I thought I found their work interesting. And so it was a little bit more specific and tailored towards the school's research and what kind of programs they were like, what kind of faculty and the research they were doing there. So that was the biggest difference for me.
I think for undergrad, you're writing about what you hope to study, what you hope to learn. For grad school, I definitely want to demonstrate that to show, not tell, that I'm passionate about something, and to point to the pieces of experience I have, the work that I've done, that kind of demonstrate my interest in this topic, demonstrate why I think this type of graduate training is what I need for my career, why I think a program is a fit for me. And you definitely, the point of your statement of purpose is to show that you know how to write a research question, and you understand, what the life is like for a grad student, what you're actually learning, what kind of work you're doing, demonstrating that you know what that is and that you want to do it, that you're imagining yourself, being in that program.
I would also like to iterate what Daphne and John said before. I didn't get to introduce myself at the beginning, but I'm a first year in the Asian Studies MA program. And because with trying to write a personal statement for grad school, it's also very important to try to draw on your experience, especially if you're whether you're transitioning straight from undergrad or you're like me who was working in a nonprofit position for 3 years. It's important to let the people who are reading your application know that you understand their research and you're passionate about a specific topic, and you'd also like to talk about who you are working with and that you know the field well of which you're applying to. And at the same time, it's also important to highlight the kind of experience that you've had before, and it doesn't have to all be academic. Some people take a couple of years between undergrad and graduate school, and it can also bring a lot to the table, especially when it came for me, when some of the professors were also from the same areas that I was doing professional work in before. And that also helped build a lot of connections with the faculty from various institutions.
I'll add that I'll echo everything that everybody else has said so far, but also there's kind of a discrepancy in the way programs a lot of times will say, they'll sometimes refer to the statement of purpose, which is an opportunity to talk about your research interests and really pitch the fact that you deserve to be or that you want to be a peer to a lot of the professors in your program, and that's a place for a lot of research interests. And then increasingly programs are having an additional essay that is really more of like a personal essay where you talk about yourself as a person and what qualities you can bring to the program. So sometimes you'll be asked to write one where you kind of need to separate out yourself as like a person who can be just like a good influence in your field by the way you treat others and the experiences that you're bringing. But then the more traditional kind is the personal essay as truly just like a statement of purpose of like your goals of being in grad school.
I think also that I applied to a couple of schools that split those out into two separate things and required both. And then some didn't. So I think that when they don't split them out, you can kind of lump them together. But when they do separate them out, I think that the statement of purpose should really focus on why you think that particular school is a good place for you to reach your goals. And the personal statement should be more of how you got to this point and why you think it sets you up well to continue.
Thank you, guys. Our next question, should I cater my personal statement to the specific program that I'm applying to? Should I write a different version for each program?
Yeah, you should. It doesn't have to be entirely different. Like I didn't write a brand new personal statement every time, but I definitely heavily edited it to reflect sort of like the mission statement of the particular program. Like if you look up programs, you'll see that they will have a handful of words that they use over and over and over on their websites, like collaboration or like interdisciplinary and stuff like that. So when those words pop up, those are ideas I tried to focus more towards why, I thought that was a good fit. And then if you're looking into, I know this is true for sciences, but specific labs there that you can comment on being like, I think your institution is a good fit for me because of this specific person.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. It's definitely yes to catering to the place that you're applying, because so once that you want to show that you really fit into the department you're applying to and the program you're applying to, so you want to cater it to like to the questions and the type of research that is being done where you are going. And it's like small differences really make a big difference is like when you're applying. But also if you send a very generic one that doesn't completely feel like that feels like it can fit in any place, like in any program, I think it is likely that it will be like that it will take points off you when in the decision process. Because you really want to show that you are an addition to that program and to that department. And if it just feels very generic, I feel like admission committees might be more inclined to like pass on that application.
And I will say that depending on your department, some departments are very specific in terms of you're applying to a specific professor or PI. And so you have to make sure that it's all for the funding purposes. So that PI will be funding you, for example. And so you want to make sure that you are writing to the people, to the school, to the program, because they're trying to make, like to David's point, they're trying to make sure you're a good fit. And they're also trying to think about funding for you. And so some PIs are willing, some PIs are like, oh, you want to work with me? Great. I have a pot of money, accept this student. And so just be mindful of that. And I was kind of lazy. I'm not sure if it's the same case 7 years later, but I had a very template personal statement for the first few paragraphs. And my last paragraph is where I changed it up. I was like, oh, this program, I want to apply for this, these are the professors I'm interested in, here's why. And so I always had my last part, I just, deleted that last paragraph or two and just rewrote a new, few sentences for the next program. So that was, I'm not sure that's still useful now, but helped me a lot.
Perfect. So for our next question, how can I make myself stand out through my essay? And do you recommend talking about hobbies?
I would recommend. I've had good experiences with this advice, and because this was given to me when I was applying. But I think it's just a good practice is to tell it like a story. So like if it sounds really stilted or it sounds like you're like you're not really speaking from the heart, then like maybe reconsider, because if you tell it like a story, then it'll really capture your journey through your field and like why you want to pursue graduate school. And in that regard, it'll be more memorable because people will be able to see you as like a person when they read your essay. And I feel like as a whole, the interview process and personal statement process is much more personable. So if they can figure out who you are as a person who wants to do research in this field rather than, you know, like your test scores or your GPA, it'll really benefit you.
I agree with Freddie completely. I think, you know, the answer that first came to mind is to tell the truth, tell like how you have figured out what you're actually passionate about, interested in studying. How did you find out about the program? How did you decide that you wanted the training that you will get from graduate school? Yeah, the more honest and like detailed you can be about explaining that process, it adds a ton of credibility to what you're saying, and like Freddie said, makes you a lot more personable. I don't have an opinion about hobbies. If you can do it in like a, I don't know, relevant way, that, I don't know. I didn't, yeah.
I have an opinion about hobbies, sort of. Oh, sorry, was somebody else can talk? Yeah, I think definitely to agree with this story. Advice that I like, really good advice that I was given was you want to kind of make it seem like everything was prefigured to get you to the point where you want to apply to this graduate program. So if you're going to talk about hobbies or interests, I end up talking about my childhood a lot actually in my essays, my same thing for grant applications, because I have a couple of things that I can like pull out of my pocket to say like, I was interested in this as a child. This was my hobby when I was a child. And now I do this in grad school. So I'll say like, I was really interested in like bones and mummies when I was a kid. And this was something that like shaped my intellectual development. Now I'm an archaeologist. So if you can find ways to like make it show that like, man, your whole life has really been leading up to this point, even though it kind of hasn't, but you want to kind of make it seem that way, at least is advice that I have been given.
Also, I want to say that if like that's not the case and you changed your mind super last minute, that's also totally cool because that's what I did. Like all the stories I have from growing up is like I was gonna work in an ER. I was gonna be a doctor and it was gonna be so cool. And then like my senior year of college, I was like, you know what? No thanks. So I, instead of doing the whole like leading up thing, like if that works for you, that's awesome. But if it doesn't, I chose to focus my personal statement on like the specific moment that like I became so inspired by something that made me be like, wow, I've been wanting to do this other thing for, 10 years, but maybe not because this is so freaking cool. So I think if you can like find a moment also that really inspired you, that's also an okay thing to focus on.
Perfect. Our next question and our last question for the panel part of this event will be, what would you say is a good timetable for the personal statement, such as when to start it, edit it, etc.?
So I started writing all the rough drafts for my personal statement at the beginning of October, and then I would send it to people who had either relevant knowledge in the field and everything and look at this. Take what I say with a grain of salt because I was applying to disciplines that I had never applied to before in the past, nor had taken coursework with, such as political science and anthropology. So I tried to ask different people who I knew from my previous profession who were more experienced in the field by November. And then by mid-November, I started editing everything, and then December I had it ready. But if you can start earlier, then that's much better because people might have more time. I just happened to be lucky, and a lot of people were still readily available around that November timeline.
And specifically, so mine was timed up with fellowship application deadlines. Specifically in STEM, a lot of people apply for something called the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship, and that's due at the end of October. So I think I really started hashing into my personal statement in September. And then that gives you enough time to get words on a page, and then it gives you enough time to edit it and send it to people. And you're like putting a piece of yourself out there when you send someone a personal statement for critiques. I really had to learn not to take it personally when someone said that it wasn't a good personal statement, because it's your story that you're putting out there. But make sure it goes to like your research advisor or academic advisor, for editing.
I'll just add that I started taking notes a lot earlier than I sat down to write the statement. I think as soon as I started having ideas about why I actually wanted to go to grad school, I was like writing them down in a little notes app. And then as you're researching programs, you're probably going to look at a lot more programs than you actually decide to apply to. And so any notes you can take about, how you found a program, what actually made it look interesting to you, desirable to you, write those notes down, because those are things that you can include and add a little flavor. I think if you need to pop out a personal statement in a weekend, you can do it. If you give it time to write a draft, sit on it for a week or more, and then come back to it, you're probably going to have new ideas of things to share or how to frame yourself, how to present yourself to the schools you're applying to.
I'm weird. I'm a very type A planner, so I was like a year out with mine. But I wasn't like necessarily like every weekend writing, right? But something I wanted to do was take advantage of like the Career Services Center at my school. And so they had a lot of different examples, and also they had personality tests that I took advantage of. So like learning about just myself and just kind of what my strengths were, at least what career services perceive my strengths to be. So I just took a lot of time. So I guess for me, it started early, but I didn't really start writing until I think I was similar to Jen, where it was like maybe September. But a year prior, I was prepping. I was like really trying to just learn more about why I wanted to go to grad school, what sort of like who I was as a person, what my strengths were, my weaknesses were. And so it was a long prep. But again, I think take advantage of those resources around you.
A technique that I found useful is kind of building off what Daphne said about like just jotting notes down is if you're struggling to think of like how to write or you just ideas aren't coming, just word vomit, like just block off 30 minutes or something each week just to open up a document, just write whatever you think is an idea and um iterate on past ideas or whatever just to get your ideas flowing, because a lot of this is an iterative process that like you'll write one idea and then you'll read it later and you're like, this really doesn't flow well, so you'll restart or you're gonna edit the one that you already have. But it's a good idea just to get in the vibe of it, because a lot of like the essays that you write in school for assignments are very formal and like academic, but your personal statement is about you, and it's always weird for people to write about themselves, and like I don't want to feel like I'm bragging or something, so just get practice with it. I feel like the earlier you start that process, the easier it will be when you're like, okay, it's October and I'm about to apply.
I have a suggestion. If you have your undergrad personal statements available to you, go back and read them. And if it embarrasses you to read them, then that is an indication that you might want to come back and do like a rewrite or a review a few months after you first write your personal statement. So if you, I don't know, you might want to like have an opportunity to take a second swing at it. So that's, encouragement to start your first draft earlier.
If no one else has anything else to add, we can move on to the breakout room segment of our event. So now we're going to be putting you guys into breakout rooms with some grad students, and then you guys can, we have this event centered around interviews and personal statements, but feel free to ask about anything related to grad school or even just related to like research or anything that you might be interested in asking. I think Lizzie has the breakout rooms already set up and feel free to join them whenever they're open. And also, if you're interested in talking to a specific grad student, please feel free to DM me or any of the other moderators, and then we can make that happen. Or we can also like switch you guys around in the middle.
Okay, I am opening them now. Enjoy.
Is back in the main session. So I think we can start to close out this event. So thank you everyone so much for coming to our event today. We really enjoyed having the graduate students talk about their experiences, an interview and personal statement, as well as many, many other topics in the breakout rooms. Right now, I would like to invite the graduate students to put their net IDs or like their emails in the chat if you're comfortable. And then for any people attending, feel free to reach out to them about any other specific questions, or if you guys want to keep talking or chatting about anything. That's also really cool too. And then going off of that, we have our final grad school workshop. It's not really a workshop, it's more of an office hour style session. It's very, very casual. It's more like a drop-in session. So we'll have some grad students that have already came to our events and also maybe some new grad students that are coming. So we'll have another like diversity of fields that you can talk to, get more experience from. So feel free to register for that event. It is linked up on the screen. And yeah, so that event is super casual and just kind of more of a drop-in, ask anything type of format for grad school or just research in general. Yeah, so thank you everyone for coming so much. We hope to see you at our future events and also our other CURB events. A lot of them are coming up soon as well. Thank you guys.
And thank you to our speakers. You guys are the best for dedicating your night to just share your experiences. We really appreciate it. Have a great night, everyone.
Thanks so much for hosting.
Bye.